the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack is a banger. So many huge hits on this.
I saw Saturday Night Fever on Broadway.
Ooh, aren't you?
When I was younger.
Classy.
I mean, it's a great.
You're
it's
also
a great show.
Not helping the stereotype of you being a rich, spoiled
It
kid.
has nothing to do with being rich. You can go to a show on Broadway without being rich. I'm not rich.
No kid goes to a Broadway show unless they're rich.
I was probably a kid. I was probably Jordan's age. I was like mid-20s. I went with my parents.
Yeah. My parents took me to the ocean because it was free. Yvonne Elman, If I Can't Have You. Part of the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack. Did you go to Hamilton? You've been to Hamilton also.
We went to Hamilton in London on a family vacation. Why is that funny?
I don't know. London, Hamilton, vacation. All right.
I had never been overseas before.
Okay.
We went 2019. We took the kids over to London.
Yes, London.
And we went to Hamilton. And it was way more affordable than if we had gone to New York City to see it. A trip to New York City back then to watch Hamilton probably would have cost more than it cost to go to London. Let's put it that way.
Oh.
Anyway. All right.
Yes, the people are in the chat saying, push that narrative, Steve.
Hamilton's a great show, by the way.
Private jet?
No private jet. Let's go to our phone lines, our guest line, as we welcome in Tim Leonard, voice of the SU women's basketball team. Tim, are you back in Syracuse after last night's trip to Chapel Hill?
Yes, we made it back. I had to shovel off the car a little bit last night. Not too bad, though. I'm sure there will be some worse storms in the future. But tough game last night, but we made it back safely last night.
All right, so what happened?
Well, you got to start with the offense. It just wasn't a good offensive showing really from the start for Syracuse. You look at what they've been able to accomplish this year offensively. I mean, their fewest amount of points in a game this season going into last night was 71 points. And that even comes with a caveat because that was a dominant win, a 71-54 win over Northern Iowa, where they just didn't really need the offense that much. But this was a team that's been averaging 82 points per game, and they just put up 86 against Notre Dame. And then UNC, give them credit, they had a pretty sound game plan, I thought, and scouted well defensively and offensively for that matter. But in terms of what they were doing on defense, Coach Jack told me after the game, and she said in our press conference, they were just sort of packing the paint and trying to force Syracuse into shooting jump shots. And Carolina has a couple really strong perimeter defenders. A transfer, Lexi Dornowski, who transferred in from Iowa State, was the all-Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year a couple of seasons ago. So she was kind of watching Deasia Fair tightly. Georgia Woolley was being watched by Deja Kelly. And really they were switching them, and they have several good defenders on the perimeter, UNC. So Syracuse just shot a lot of threes and couldn't get inside, and they ended up shooting just 6 for 30 from 3 in the game.
How much do you think it played into last night that, the narrative that North Carolina was the more desperate team, or the team that was more motivated, given the fact that they lost inside the Dome last year as a ranked team to Syracuse, given the fact that they had just fallen out of the top 25, the revenge factor, it backs against the wall, so to speak, of trying to get back in the polls. Do you think that played into the game at all last night, or do we in the media kind of make too much of that?
I think it played into it a little bit. Coach Jack even said that. She said after the game that they played like a team that wanted to sort of get revenge because Syracuse, for all intents and purposes, knocked them out of the polls. UNC won last week. They won 2 games. They were number 24 in the nation. Syracuse, we know, was not ranked. They beat Notre Dame. Well, now all of a sudden Syracuse has to be in the polls, and UNC was basically the team that was knocked out. So, UNC was essentially a ranked team. They've been ranked all year, and they were, if you want to look at the AP poll, you could call them the number 26 team in the nation. So I think it was 2 evenly matched teams, but there probably is something to the fact that UNC knew they lost last year. I think they could probably prepare a little bit more for the game. It's not, Syracuse had to get ready for Notre Dame, and then it's a kind of a quick turnaround and get ready for UNC. I mean, both teams played on the same dates, but I think UNC was maybe circling Syracuse a little bit more, where Syracuse had a very tough game in the game before. So there's probably something to that, and I just think it was kind of your classic case of home team crowd gets involved. Calls, loose balls are kind of going their way, and it just sort of spiraled on Syracuse from there.
Are you concerned at all about what happened last night? Or is it just, one of those games you chalk it up to, okay, road game against a really good team. You didn't have it that night. They're still playing good basketball. Is it kind of a one-off, or are you concerned about what you saw in any way, shape, or form?
I'm not too concerned because it, to me, was more just an off shooting night and truly a cold shooting night. Now, I guess you could say Georgia Woolley has just had kind of a cold shooting year, really, from three-point range. It's kind of odd because she's shooting 92% from the foul line, and she shot at about 30% last year from three. So it's not like she was a knockdown shooter, but she's an efficient shooter that has a good-looking shot, and she's shooting 22% on the season now after she was 0 for 6 last night from three. So that's something that if Syracuse is going to reach their ceiling, you probably need a little bit more production from three-point range outside of Deasia Fair. Elena Rice has been solid from three-point range this season, but did struggle a little bit last night. So I think it was an off shooting night is probably the biggest summary of what happened yesterday. The good news for Syracuse is their next three games are against teams they're probably going to be favored in. And if you would have told me, going back to right before Notre Dame tipped off, that they would go 1-1 in these games, Notre Dame, number 13 team in the nation at home at the time, and then UNC, basically a ranked team, like we said. So going 1-1 over a tough two-game stretch to start this league portion of the schedule is really fine. And I think now it's just kind of bounce back and take care of business in the next three games.
All right, let's switch gears. Let's talk a little bit of lacrosse before we let you go, Tim. The men's season starting up here, and the women for that matter, in about a month. Both ranked preseason in the top 10. What are you most looking forward to with this upcoming lacrosse season?
Well, I think Syracuse, in terms of the men's team, it's just really exciting because they pretty much are bringing back the core from last year, and now it's just wondering how much are these guys going to grow. I saw Paul Carcaterra, who does a lot of the Syracuse games on ESPN, lacrosse analyst, does some football work too, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners know him, Syracuse grad. He tweeted something yesterday saying, over-under in points for Joey Spallina. I'll set it at 80 points, and kind of threw it out there. And Spallina was the ACC Rookie of the Year last year. Don't have it in front of me, but I think it was like 65, 66 points in the end, which was a freshman record. So you figure that they might play a couple more extra games next year with a better team and a better likelihood of making the tournament and stuff. But, that type of question got me thinking, well, Joey might not get to 80 points and he still has a great year or develops because they have added some nice pieces. And the biggest thing will probably be what do they get at the face-off X, because they've addressed that in the transfer portal, but with a D3 guy from Tufts, it'll be interesting how effective he is out of the gates, and Mason Kuhn. So I think overall it's exciting because it's kind of just bringing the band back, and a lot of the freshmen from last year should be a lot better as sophomores, and the sophomores that are now turning into juniors should be a natural progression for them.
All right, Tim, great stuff. I know you had a late night last night. Thanks for coming on with us. Enjoy your weekend. I'm sure we'll talk again soon here.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, guys.
All right, Tim Leonard joining us here on the show. When we return, we're going to bring on John Schmelk. We're going to talk some Giants football. The Giants getting set to close out their season against the Philadelphia Eagles. What's going on with Philadelphia? We'll get John's thoughts on that coming up next on ESPN Radio.